All right, folks, my name is Bill Zimmerman. I'm the Assistant Director for Employer Engagement here with the Career Professional Development Center. This is the last one of our fall series of professional panels that we do. These panels are an opportunity for our students to have an introduction to various people in a specific topical area. This specific topic is on entrepreneurship. We have three people joining us today as part of our panel, and I'll introduce them briefly, at least as far as name and what organization they're from, and then I'll give them kind of the first 30 seconds to introduce themselves and whom they are. So I'll start out with, and I'm going by who's on my camera and on my Zoom. So I have the top left, I have Zach. And Zach, your last name, I'm going to try it, but please forgive me if I butcher it. Minushka?
It's Muskie, Zach Muskie.
Sorry, sir. Zach's from Corkboard Concepts. So Zach, do you want to give us a little bit more about yourself? Kind of a 30-second sort of like, here's who I am, here's what I'm about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually graduated from IUP in 2014. I majored in marketing. And in 2018, I founded Corkboard Concepts. We're a marketing and advertising agency, primarily focused in digital advertising. We're out of Pittsburgh, PA.
Excellent. I'm just turning the sound up a little bit here in the room. Next on my camera, it'll be to my top right on the screen. It's top left. We have Geraldine Convento from Reverence Global. Geraldine, if you'd like to let us know a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm from Oakland, California, and I've been an entrepreneur since 2004. I have a few businesses, including Reverence. They're mainly in the spaces of marketing, online programs, and personal empowerment. And I'm also a podcaster and social media influencer.
Thank you, Geraldine. And then finally with us, at least as far as panelists, we have Donald Robinson, who's from Global Human Performance. Donald.
Good morning. My name is Donald Robinson, or as many people call me, Coach Donald. I own and operate Global Human Performance. We're a personal training studio here in Pittsburgh, PA. I've had the business for 5 years, and leading up to that, many different experiences of dabbling and dibbling and dabbling in many different aspects of fitness that led me to having the business. So we work with a lot of youth athletes, adult athletes, and helping people with injuries and getting them back to what they need to be doing with themselves.
Okay, excellent. Thank you all three of you for joining us. Just to double check, I think I've got all of our panelists. We had some folks who unfortunately had to cancel on us last minute due to emergencies, life comes up, things happen. But just double checking, I don't see any other names in the online or in chat, so I think we're good to keep going forward. I'll start off with one of my questions, and then I'll open it up to the folks here in the room or online. But I guess the first question I have, and I always like to ask this on folks because I think it's interesting, is what are some of the biggest misconceptions that the general public has about becoming an entrepreneur? And if you just want to kind of either give me a sign, give me a wave, we'll obviously get to everybody. We have a small panel, so it'll be good today, but give you some time here to like think about an answer. Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, so when I started Corkboard Concepts, a lot of my friends were like, oh, you're going to have the life, you're going to make all this money, and you can take as many days off as you want, and you can play golf, and you know, your life's cake now that you know you're a business owner and you run your own thing, you're your own boss. And that's not the case at all. I play the least amount of golf that I've ever played since starting a business. You know, it's really rewarding, but it's not all you know, like from the outside perspective, people think that sometimes it's really easy and you have all this free time, and it seems to be sometimes quite the opposite. Not to have a negative tone on that. Sorry, not to have a negative tone on that. It's enjoyable to be busy and do things. Sometimes more enjoyable than golf. So
busy is good. at times. Geraldine, I think you were going to go next.
Yeah, I think that many people have the misconceptions that entrepreneurs have all the answers, which is actually the opposite. I think that the entrepreneurial journey is there's a lot of depth to it. You have to think about process and systems and how to get clients. And there's so many things that are usually traditionally taken care of when you work in a job position. But as an entrepreneur, you're kind of figuring out as you go, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because I think there's a lot of rewards in figuring it out. But yeah, we don't have all the answers. And I don't mean for that to be intimidating. It's just something that is true.
So something that I've found with friends, with family, with clients even, and especially with other entrepreneurs who are new to the space, is that the misconception that you can continue to live the same way once you start and own a business. You grow up for 18 years and someone's telling you what to do pretty much all day. As you get older, marginally less people start telling you what to do. But if you go out and get a job, there are still people telling you what to do. There's almost a bit of a path laid out to go on. But as an entrepreneur, you actually have to tell yourself what to do. And there's the beauty of, oh, you have all this time on your hands, because I could legitimately not do any work the rest of the day. But the pain in that is that I have to self-direct the days and figure out when's the best times to work. I still have to work because I have a training business. They're still working around times when people want to train. So I have to be able to do that when it comes to how to handle a staff, when it comes to what do you want the identity of your business to be? Think about the places you like going the most to spend your money, or that your family likes to spend their money. They all kind of have an identity. Somebody has to come up with that. And so there's this misconception you can kind of just go with the flow based on how you've always lived and be directed, but you have to have a lot of self-control to be able to direct yourself in this lane.
Okay, great. Thank you all for that. Again, I think that I always find it interesting to hear what are some of the general public misconceptions of various things when we do these kind of topics. So for the folks in the room or the folks online, are there any of you that have a question for our panel? Oh, go ahead, sir.
What habits helped you establish your work ethic?
If you didn't hear that, what habits have helped you establish your work ethics? Did I get your question right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure they were able to hear.
I can answer that one. For me, it's definitely been allowing myself to take breaks, because I used to be the person who would work through the entire day and get really burnt out. But I found that taking breaks or spacing out my Zoom meetings really has supported me in being able to reset. And also keeping the perspective that right now isn't always how it's going to be. So from my experience, it's been that there are times that are very challenging. Sometimes there's issues with cash flow, or there's some things that come up with a particular project. And just being able to tell myself that right now is really stressful and it can change in any given moment. And I think that's what the beauty of entrepreneurship is that there's a lot more control over your mental state and what actions you're going to take next.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can kind of echo that too, because, and maybe this question is taking a little bit of a turn, but I think it is important. Mental health is so important in entrepreneurship, because I think entrepreneurs set such a high standard for themselves, almost an unobtainable standard. And, at least for me, anecdotally, it was a big learning curve that not everything's going to be perfect all the time. And being a perfectionist, it's a struggle to understand that sometimes you have to let somebody else take control of this project, or you have to understand that, maybe you came short of what your expectations were, but you have to take a step back and see that it was still a success. And then just in general, managing mental health is really good habits to stay in, when being an entrepreneur full time, because it can be a little bit taxing at times. So definitely understanding yourself and your limits and staying within those.
Coach?
For me in this journey, it has been learning how to flow, because I'm a bit of a forceful person. So learning to flow, and then also learning how to set priorities. And with the priorities, every quarter and every year, I have to sit down and reset. What are we working on? Beginning with the end in mind and looking at, all right, here's what I want this business to look like in its most mature stage, and stepping back and figuring out what leads up to that. And then being able to break that down into small things that I can really expend my mental energy and physical energy working on, and trying to grow into, being able to delegate, being able to actually grow a team, so that like I can't do everything. And if you have something big you want to do, you can't do it by yourself. So being able to prioritize those things has been important with directing the work, but also learning how to flow. Being an athlete, being just kind of a busybody type of person, I just want to punch, but that doesn't always work. And then you get burned out, and then I have to deal with my own mental health issues from doing that. So learning how on certain days and certain times, my energy is like, hey, I should just kind of do, not so important work, or just like not work at all. Some days I might only go 3 hours that day, and other days knowing, oh, the energy's flowing. Oh, I got it today. My mind's running, my body feels good. I might actually pull a very long day, but it'll be very productive. So learning to flow with that, flowing with opportunities. And, as has been mentioned, like with cash flow, and learning the cycles of things, and knowing when's the season to punch it, and when's the season that, I should be resting in this time, and being able to prepare adequately for that.
Thank you. Other questions from folks in the room or on the line? Go ahead.
I was just wondering, what was the driving force to make you guys become entrepreneurs?
So just in case you didn't hear, driving forces, what drove you to entrepreneurial work? Go ahead, Zach. I saw you first, and then we'll go Donald and then Geraldine.
So definitely when I was through like high school and college, I would start like little businesses. Like when I was at IUP, I created this like campus swap shop to like buy and sell video games and graphing calculators. And to be brutally honest, I just wanted to make as much money as possible. It was definitely like a money driven thing. But as I've kind of like grown in my career and growing a business, I think I was really just chasing like affirmations of like, I set a goal for myself and I can succeed. In college, I defined that as making money, but now that's a little bit different. We employ 20 individuals and give them a livelihood, which is very rewarding. And we help our clients and help small businesses. So I think the goals change, but initially it was money, and now it's kind of grown into a couple of other things.
Thinking back to when I was in high school, and even before high school, I grew up, the whole Section 8 housing, very tough. Then I got into foster care in middle school. And as I got older through high school, it was like, I don't want to end up as a poor adult. I'm around all these people who, as adults, they don't seem like they love their lives. I don't like looking at their lives or being part of it. And for me, it was the only way I, at 15, could figure I could be rich was I could be a real estate agent. I could own some sort of business, or I could like be a professional athlete, which I did not have the acumen for. And, as I got out of high school, I could go to the military. I always would say I could work at the Wilkinsburg CVS. I could go run the streets. None of those were appealing options when I could go to college and go figure out what's something I could be good at. I kind of liked training. And then, there was another switch that flipped. I went to Slippery Rock. I actually graduated in 2014, Zach. I went to Slippery Rock and I did all the on-campus leadership stuff, which helped me with building my audacity muscles, because I was not a very bold person in high school. But in college, I learned how to be a little bit more audacious and learning about just doing stuff and just starting things and just taking initiatives of, hey, there's this idea in my head and I can make it reality. Still to this day, it's bewildering to me actually to be able to do stuff like that. So, as the journey went on, is realizing, hey, I can actually work for myself and create things, and then figure out how do I make this into opportunities for other people. Because again, have all this you want to do in life, but you need other people to be able to do it. And you have to be able to make something that's great for them to be able to have them do it with you.
Ironically, for me, it was because I wanted personal freedom. So I decided to be an entrepreneur at a very young age because my parents had me when they were in their late 30s and my brother and sister were grown. So I was always around adults being shuffled amongst the people, but never spending consistent time with one person because they each worked for someone else and sometimes had multiple jobs. So at a very young age, I decided that being an entrepreneur was the answer to being able to have time and freedom, which for the past 18 years hasn't always been true. However, it's gotten better. So yeah, that's the reason why.
Other questions? And again, folks who are joining us on Zoom, feel free to drop it in the chat. Okay, I'll ask one then off of my list. Looking for one that we haven't really touched on yet. I guess what are some of the, or what has been one of, or maybe some of the impacts or some of the ways that the pandemic and COVID and everything we went through in the last 2 to 3 years, how has that changed what you do either day in and day out, your business, how you approach things? Take that how you will. Go ahead, Geraldine.
Surprisingly, the pandemic completely transformed my business. So in our main business, Reverence Global, we focus on online presence, which means all of the places online that a business is. And as soon as the pandemic hit, businesses knew that they needed to make a shift, and it was very significant. So there are several businesses who are already successful and had an online presence, but really wanted to make sure to do it better. So our clients, actually our revenue doubled when the pandemic hit, and it's continuing to rise because people are starting to see the importance of having an online presence and making sure that it communicates for their audiences.
So for my business, we had to totally transform the way that we approached marketing campaigns. The way consumers purchased completely changed because the brick and mortar kind of phased out as people were not shopping in person as much, and a lot of it was moving to e-commerce and online. Also, a huge sector of where we work in is the automotive industry. So we had, I think at one point, like 15 car dealerships advertising through us. And our revenue was anywhere from like $100,000 to $150,000 a month in just the auto industry. The pandemic, I don't know if you guys were aware, but the logistics of producing vehicles around the world were halted because different parts from different countries stopped kind of the production, and there were no cars to sell for a long time. So we had to pivot. We pivoted into purchasing vehicles. A lot of car dealerships you'll see now advertise that they'll buy your car. And I'm sure, if you own a car, you'll get emails and texts and see, we'll purchase your car for a premium. So we were able to pivot a little bit, but that's one example of how kind of these little impacts across every single industry forced us to get a little bit more creative in the way that we approached our campaigns.
That the shutdown was, for Global Human Performance, definitely probably the best thing that happened for the business. Up until that point, for 2-3 years, we had only done in-person training. And so we'd only done, private training. And then over a weekend, we had to go completely from 100% in person to 100% online. We had a couple of structures in place with remote. We use an app for some of our training with our athletes. So we had just started doing that at the beginning of the year, which was really in our favor. But we had to go learn to be online. And so, and I had kind of was in a very big life transition of potentially moving, potentially kind of ending things. It downsized a lot, and I was the only coach at the time. And then throughout the late part of the spring, I decided, all right, I'm gonna stay in Pittsburgh. I'm actually gonna hire immediately because I had been kind of dragging my feet about that. I need to hire immediately. I needed to be able to build these other parts with our track program, with our online program. So we ended up, let's fast forward to now, where I went from just being me and not really seeing how to expand. So we have five other coaches that are on the team. We also have other service offerings from remote coaching. We used to actually do Zoom workouts because we were doing that during the pandemic, but we stopped doing that. And then a lot of other outdoor running things that were just kind of ideas that I didn't really push on, but with the pandemic needing to push on that. And then also I grew to be much more comfortable working from home as needed. I'm not much of a homebody, I'm still not, but it helped with being able to help me be more varied with where my work setting is, as well as our niche, because the pandemic also taught me who's really paying my bills. And so over the last couple of years, have really doubled down with our market niche of we work with a lot of runners. And I myself also transitioned more to be a long distance runner for that, because of my own enjoyment, but also for brand value. So those were some things that really shuffled the cards a lot for us in a positive way.
Thank you. Before we move on, I'm going to invite the folks in the room. We do have the Chick-fil-A lunches up in the front. We have fries, there's nuggets, there's the chicken sandwiches, condiments there in the bags, and water. Feel free to grab as we continue on with our panel. Anybody in the room have a question, or anybody on chat have a question? Yes, sir.
How would you define success?
Good question. How do you define success?
I actually have a podcast about this. It's called 3 Pillars of Success. But for me, there are 3 pillars, and this is for me personally. I don't think this is everybody's answer, but for me, I believe you have to have willingness, commitment, and communication. And it has to come sequentially. You have to be willing to commit to something. You have to commit to it, which means taking the action steps to do whatever it is that you're putting yourself out there to do, and develop communication, because communication can help you to navigate wherever you need to go. So if you feel stuck, you can find the answers. Or if you need to set a boundary with someone that isn't aligned with what you're looking to do, you can do that. And you can also use communication to express yourself and show people how you have your own unique viewpoint in whatever it is that you're getting into.
For me, defining success for me is in freedom of movement and choices. I would like to be able to, at any state, have the ability to have choices of options, whether it's in a more shallow sense of where I can live and things like that, to the more emotional sense of I'm in a pressure situation. I can still have choices with how I'm going to respond to that. I hold near and dearly that discipline is freedom. And so being able to stay in positions where my personal discipline is what's related to my freedom versus somebody else's discipline or somebody else's structure determining my own freedom. I don't like that. That makes me not feel good. So whether it's with my business, with the people that are around me, with my environment, I curate an environment and I curate a business by reflection of that my discipline determines my outcome, because I trust me and I want the freedom to be able to choose and respond to situations and respond to life versus always being reactive. And I find that when there's no discipline, there's only chaos.
Yeah. And then for me, it's I always try to set goals. I literally have a notes app page. I have annual goals, and then as a company, we have quarterly goals, and there's a whole strategy among creating goals for yourself. It's is very important to set the correct goals. Have some that are obtainable, have some stretch. And those are little like micro points of success when you can reach those. For the longest time, I thought that there would be this moment in my career where I was like, yes, I did it. Like a video game, you beat it and it's like a congratulations, you won. And that kind of doesn't exist because as an entrepreneur, you're always growing and you naturally want more and you want to reach the next goal and the next goal. I think it's important to reflect on what you have achieved and set goals and reflect on those goals that you set and have accomplished as well over time.
Hey, Bill, can I elaborate something quickly?
Absolutely.
So Zach brought me back down because I realized, oh, I'm a little bit like high right now. Let me come back down to what does that tangibly look like in regards to why I said all that. And the health of the business and being able to be in a financially or structurally healthy position. And by achieving said goals, that helps with having the freedom, right? All of that discipline and all of these philosophical action words, they play out in being able to be financially secure and be able to be in a power position at all times, which I find that entrepreneurship allows me to do so with time, finances, being able to check those boxes keeps me in a power position versus being vulnerable. So I just wanted to clarify that because I didn't actually say anything concrete. It was all the philosophy that's under the concrete. And I just wanted to clarify that.
That's okay, perfectly fine. And as I was going to chime in before you jumped in there, Don, it's really hard to platinum life. You can't get that 100% a lot of times with things. There's always another goal. There's always a new area to conquer. Other folks, questions? Go ahead.
What set of skills and resources do you possess, and how do you make them work together?
So in case you didn't hear, or in case folks on the line didn't hear, what are the skills and what are the resources that you possess that have made you successful, continue to make yourself be successful? Did I got that right? Okay.
I can start here. So skills and resources seems like two different buckets. When it comes to skills, I do want to echo what Geraldine mentioned about communication. I think it's so important. And I'll start this by saying I might be a little biased because I started my career in sales. And I read a book about selling and creating a business, and you're always selling, but communication is so important in entrepreneurship, because that's really what you do is communicate with people to grow. You might be communicating to your employees, you might be communicating to prospects, communicating to your support system, and building a foundational skill of communication is so important in entrepreneurship. And then when it comes to resources, literally everything. I was on the internet, books, YouTube videos. I was, soliciting opinions from videos of Mark Cuban and Warren Buffett, as well as videos that had 20 views of people's perspectives that ran small businesses. Also, tangible in-person communications. If you identify people in your local area that, you may strive to become or want to be like or learn from, reaching out to people and asking for real conversations was so helpful for me. You would be surprised who was willing to have conversations with you. I had a conversation with the CEO of iMark at one point, which I thought was like pretty untouchable person. And he was very willing to talk to a college student, as well as other business owners. If you reach out, people will want to talk to you. So find resources any way you can and absorb information as much as you can.
For me, I found that my personal superpowers as an entrepreneur has been observation and diplomacy. So kind of tying in with what Zach was saying, being able to communicate in a way that's very neutral for everybody, not too biased and not being I guess, to people pleasing. It's like a fine balance between the two, and really observe what's happening, not just with myself, but with my teammates, with the clients. What's their body language? What are they saying? Do they feel comfortable? So really paying attention in that way. And in terms of resources, I found it to be very helpful to have mentors, consultants, other people with more experience. And the key part of that was discernment. So being able to obtain suggestions and advice from all of these different people, but at the end of the day, follow my own intuition for making decisions and what would work best for my business. So that's been a really guiding light for me to be able to take everybody's what they're saying and then do whatever's best for my business. And oh, I should probably share too. One really great book that I highly recommend for everyone is Cash Flow Quadrant, and that's by Robert Kiyosaki. That breaks down the 4 different types of money making and the personalities that go with each one of those. You could be a mix of a few of them, or you could be just one. But I found it to be very eye-opening to understand where people are at and the comfort level of jumping to be an entrepreneur or a business owner or investor, etc. But I highly recommend that book.
Definitely second the book recommendation in that aspect of discernment and learning to trust yourself. For me, 3 things that I find are very important, like skills, and they play into resource acquisition because, like Zach said, those are 2 very different things. But skill-wise, I find leadership, openness, as well as the ability to communicate being very, very important. Openness in the sense of you just never know who somebody knows, what can happen if you go there. And again, that goes back into the aspect of being able to direct yourself. So again, for us, we work with a lot of runners, but we do just general personal training for whomever. But like I had to decide, I'm going to go join running clubs and just like go run with people. And that has turned into a variety of different opportunities from not even being forceful about talking about my business, but the presence of being there makes it happen. Or even like this morning, I went for a run. I ran to my sister's house to go send my niece and nephew off to school. And I ran into an NFL player, or ex-NFL player who I used to train like 7 years ago with another mentor of mine who was stopped me on the street and we linked up because he wants me to train his son. And this from going out for a run at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so that openness to just go and have experiences with people and you just never know what happens. Leadership, because quite frankly, you have to be able to lead. You have to be able to talk to people and be able to create win-win scenarios so that when somebody's engaging with you, they are able to benefit out of whatever you're going to get from them and being able to help give them a vision. Because as you move into the entrepreneurship space, you will find that a lot of people generally may not have the same type of big ideas as you or have the same risk tolerance that you have. They will want to cling to something, and you have to be able to be somebody who's trustworthy of being clung to. And so that is leadership, and that just comes through experience of messing up and of doing well and taking note of which one was which. And then being able to communicate, because you have to be able to get your point across, whether it's in a marketing sense, whether it's from a leadership sense, whether it's in a sales sense. You have to be able to sell people on you all of the time. You have to be able to sell. I have to sell people on my people, whether it has nothing to do with me, and being able to get people on board and being able to get your message across. So I think those 3 things are very important. They play into all the resources, which generally resources are really just people. How many people know you, like you, can trust you, and that you can call upon, and how many different, whether it's my accountant, whether it's an attorney, whether it's these other trainers, competitors, quote unquote, whether it's other service providers who might be close to me, and being able to have this network of people, not so much because, oh, bad things happen and you never know who you need to call, but you never know who you need to talk to, who's going to give you a good idea. Even in being able to be on this panel, that sense of communication and openness. I have one of my interns is from IUP. I have no idea how I even found this, honestly. I don't remember, but just being open to being on here and just communicating, and that just leads one thing to another. And I actually got some good, tidbits to think about myself just from Zach and Geraldine, just from being on here, but that's an openness because some people are very hard to impress, and being very hard to impress will get you nowhere.
Great. Other questions either from the room or from the chat? I know some people have class coming up here, so you might see some movement in the room. There's a couple of folks needed to dip out a little bit early, but I guess one of the questions that I can kind of follow up with is, what are some of the biggest challenges that are facing either your own personal businesses or just as entrepreneurs in general? What are some of the biggest challenges that are occurring right now?
I think something that I find as a struggle that I also I'm learning how to do well, and that other entrepreneurs around me struggle with people. You know, people's always going to be the big struggle, whether it's getting people on board, finding the right people, putting people in the right positions to win. People are often a struggle, and depending on the type of business that you're in, like restaurant and food service type businesses, getting the right people and being able to keep them engaged is a constant struggle that I think you can learn to be good at, but you never just solve.
For me, I think cash flow and money management is very challenging, especially if it's for a solopreneur or someone with a small team. Because with entrepreneurship, you're generating your own revenue. There isn't a consistent stream. And sometimes, even if you have a client on retainer where they're paying you every month, sometimes they cancel their they cancel their contract. And so there's a gap of when bills need to be paid and when you're being paid. So I think for that, it's really important to be pay a lot of attention to the money aspect of the business. And that could be kind of challenging, especially if the entrepreneur themselves have a interpersonal challenge dealing with money in their own life. So one example I'll give is that years ago, I had a business partner. We had a team of about 9 or 10 people, and we took out a loan. It was a $100,000 loan. But our own business finances weren't really set up properly. We weren't using the proper systems. We were using spreadsheets and other things instead of something like QuickBooks. And the thing is, if you're not impeccable with the way that you track money, there can be a disadvantage. It could be disadvantageous later on. So I found that those early on decisions of trying to save money by not using a bookkeeper and having the proper accounting systems really impacted us 2 years later when we almost had no money. So if an entrepreneur is someone who in general has a lot of adversity toward money management, it's important to begin to try and learn how it works, get the right consultants or teammates that can help to support in the money management aspect of the business, because whatever's happening today impacts the future. So I would say cash flow and money management definitely is something that can be confronting. And early on, you have to tackle those issues of however you feel about money and people paying you for your services, as well as the support of managing that.
So my biggest struggle is managing personnel. I thought that being a manager would be easy. Like other people are doing the work and you're just kind of telling them what to do, showing them how to do it, but it's so much deeper than that. So again, I think Geraldine mentioned it before is, be humble enough to reach out and find answers. Don't feel like you have to come up with the answer yourself. I have a great support team of, we have our lawyer, our bookkeeper, our accountant, and HR personnel. So many people that are so much smarter than me in those different aspects that they work in that I lean on as a resource every single day. And, take advantage of the people around you. try to never be the smartest person in the room, because that will prohibit growth, personal growth, and always look for help. I will mention this too. So that's a struggle of me being an entrepreneur, but I do recognize, for people wanting to get into entrepreneurship, and this might be a little bit anecdotal, but I'm on TikTok, as I'm sure a lot of people are, and I see a lot of, I get very entrepreneurial content, and I see a lot of these make a lot of money very fast and don't put a lot of work into it. And some of them might be legit, some of them might not be. But if you're interested in becoming an entrepreneur, make sure that, you really educate yourself in whatever you get into. Be the smartest person that you can be when making these decisions. If you're thinking about getting into something, sometimes if it seems too good to be true, it might be. I don't want to discourage anybody from trying anything, because a lot of people have success in different areas. But definitely try to educate yourself as much as possible. That's what I did. I graduated from college, and then I wanted to start my own business, but I kind of chose to get a 9-to-5 job. I did that for 2 years. I found another opportunity for 2 years, and then I felt like I knew the products and services well enough, and processes to do it on my own. That was just my path. Everybody has a different path and finds success in many different ways. But for me, educating myself really helped in that. So.
Okay, great. Other questions from the room or from the chat? Oh yeah, go ahead. What is something that separates you from your competitors? Or maybe multiple things, but at least, if there's one thing you can kind of pick out.
For what I do in my space with sports performance personal training, it is that our staff, more than half of our staff ran college track. I'm still very actively competing in sports, whether it's ultimate frisbee, whether it's running. I just got into triathlon. So I walk the walk of a lot of the people that come in to see us. So I know what they feel. I'm getting older, so I can also relate to that part as well. And I've been a child. And then the other aspects, just with how organized we are. Quite frankly, a lot of people who get into personal training, get into sports performance, they get into it very much because, to an extent they can be, not always are, but they can be pretty good at coaching, but they don't know how to run a business that actually functions well. So I've leaned into the fact that I'm pretty organized and I run a tight ship, and I get told that by other clients and other business owners. And so that is something that there's a high degree of predictability when you come and deal with us versus other places that people go, they don't always know what they're going to get.
For our company, we focus a lot on the process. And when I say process, it's not just the mechanics of how we work, it's more so the interpersonal process. We're very collaborative with our clients, and we act as their thought partner. So what I mean by that is many of the companies that come to us have been ghosted by web developers or marketers or ripped off and not really gotten the results that they were looking for, but they were over promised. So what we do is we really take the time to get to know them, understand what their unique nuances of their business are, and work with that and show them that there isn't really a cookie cutter solution to expressing yourself online. One client might need an SEO campaign and afterwards a PR campaign. Another client might need a social media marketing and a website update campaign. And they really appreciate that, because a lot of times when it comes to marketers today, they've gone to school and learned a particular way of doing marketing or advertising. So for every single client, when they're hired, they do the exact same thing. But for us, we don't believe that that's always effective. For some clients, it can be, but for a lot of the ones that come to us, at least, it's not. So we're very personalized in that way.
Yeah, and Geraldine, I think you and I are in similar. We're in the similar industry. Like, we do different things, but I think fulfillment is our difference. In terms of setting up campaigns in digital marketing, everybody has access to a similar technology. And I think a big difference is in like the back end fulfillment of setting up campaigns. So I worked for Comcast, their advertising division, and they had the same technology as Corkboard Concepts does, but they just couldn't scale it. And an example would be like if a car dealership wants to advertise digitally, they might be able to provide adults ages 18 to 54 audience and target them with advertising. But what Corkboard does differently is take that technology and, we can target people intending to buy pickup trucks or people whose leases are up in the next 6 months and target them with different messaging and really scale down to the nitty gritty, and set up a lot more direct campaigns than some of these other massive companies. And I use that example because that's where I came from. And that's kind of what I know. That's our sales pitch of what makes us different in market. But again, similar to Geraldine is really creating like a more of a custom solution than just an out of the box. This is the package that you get.
We probably have time for maybe one more question. So if anybody in the room or if anybody still in the Zoom has a question. Nope. Okay, I guess. Oh, sorry. I thought I heard somebody like, wait, no. I guess, talk to me a little bit about what are some of the ways people who work either for your organizations or you yourselves are making a difference in the world? Because I think often sometimes students are looking for, yeah, making money's great, but how am I making a difference?
For me, marketing is about self-expression, especially if it's a smaller business of maybe 50 or less employees, because the business has the opportunity to really convey a clear message of what benefits their customer base gets from engaging with their company and also buying their products and services. So when there's an entrepreneur who starts a small company and all of a sudden they have this vision that they're going to shift their world using their expertise, they really get to flex who they are and how they're different. So whenever we work with clients, I'm always thinking about that dream and that vision. How can we convey that in a way that's really authentic and lands for their audiences, and they get that that's really important for shifting their own personal life. So that's the outlook that I always look at when it comes to marketing. It's not always about just selling a product or producing the numbers. That's a benefit of having a really authentic expression for a business online.
For our staff, it's being able to be a part of someone's journey and our tagline is life-changing fitness. Often we get kids who come into us in middle school. And so I've had the privilege of being able to see kids who I started training in middle school who are now in college. And they're partially in college because of the sport that they do, in which we've had, in any given year, I've had 100 to 300 hours of contact time with them in a given year. And so with some of our people, I've had over almost 1,000 hours of time with some of these people. And our staff gets to spend significant time with them. So we get to see them over this lifeline of development, whether it's from going from middle school to college, or whether it's going through the stages of middle-age adulthood and seeing how people transform and change. And with this aspect of their sport or this hobby that keeps them fresh, that is a crucial part of a lot of people's mental health, is the activities they do. And if they can't do that activity, they're not the same person anymore. And so I think a lot of our staff also takes a lot of pride in being able to help people get through life with the activity that they do, because we keep their body up to par with what it is that they value. And so they can actually enjoy life, because when your body doesn't work right, life can be pretty miserable.
Bill, can you repeat the question one more time? Sorry, my audio kind of cut out.
Sure, no problem, Zach. Again, we were kind of looking at what are some of the ways people who either work in your area or your company itself are making a difference in the world. Because again, making money is nice, but for some of our students, they also want that personal fulfillment side in their career as well.
Yeah, so we tend to work with smaller brands and businesses, like small to medium size. And with digital advertising, it kind of levels the playing field for getting in front of consumers, and it allows, you know, Sally's Shoe Shop to compete with Nike.com online locally, and that can be very rewarding to be able to make an impact and see the needle move in terms of sales and growth for businesses that we help out.
Great. Thank you all very much. Looking that it's now about 12:25. I think at this point, we're gonna call it a panel at this point because we're getting close to time. I know some folks got to get to class and got to get to some other things. So again, I'd like to thank Zach, Geraldine, Donald for your participation today. I thought it was a great panel. I think our students got a lot of out of it. We have a lot of good questions from the room as well. So this will be up on YouTube. It'll be up on the Career and Professional Development YouTube channel, probably here in the coming weeks when I get some time, like during some of our breaks when we're not as busy to do some editing and whatnot. But again, for the folks in the room, for the folks online, I appreciate you all being here. Thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.